I feel a little bit of pressure after following those two ladies who have done such remarkable work. I don't consider myself the typical Guilford student. I came here to be a physical education major and honestly to play soccer and baseball. That was my goal. And I was a very reluctant person who was kind of immersed into the liberal arts model that Guilford presented. And it was not something I looked forward to. It was not something I wanted. It was something that was kind of thrust upon me. But I want to tell you now, after many years to think about this, how important that liberal arts training was and how much it helped me in my career. So I'll begin with my freshman year, and I know they changed the name, but when I was a freshman, we all had to take a course called Being Human in the 20th Century. Some of you remember that course? Yeah. So I had to take that course, and I wasn't a big reader when I was growing up. And of course, this professor gave us a half dozen books. He said, here you go, read and enjoy all this reading. And I thought that, and I wasn't a great reader, and I read most of the books. I didn't read all of them. I read most of the books for the class. But what it made me learn how to do was to read quickly and comprehend what I was reading and make sense of what I was reading. And as a professor at the University of Virginia, a lot of what I do is I read student papers, I read their dissertations, I have to read research articles, and it's really helped me understand and comprehend and think deeply about what I'm reading. And I really think back to some of the books I read. In fact, one of them was the story of Malcolm X, and that was one that had a big impact on me and it made me really think deeply about some of the things I was reading. Another course I took in my first year here was a course in writing. And I think the professor was Dr. Morton. Some of you might remember, guy with the beard. You remember? Yeah, was it Jim? Yeah. So I had him, and I remember him Dick Morton, that's right, yeah. And I remember, again, being very reluctant, and he was giving us 2, 3, 4-page papers to write every week. I don't want to write a paper every week. I'm a phys ed major, wants to be on the soccer field. Run around in shorts, like you said, yeah. So that was a real struggle for me to write in that class. And I got a very solid C and was very proud of that solid C. But now, again, as a university professor, a lot of what I do is I write. I write articles, I write chapters, I write books, and I feel that having been forced to write and write so much, and write clearly and thoughtfully, it helped me as a professor. And again, I think to yourselves in the professions you do, you know, you have to read, you have to write no matter what you do. And I think that type of experience really helped me. Another course I remember, again, this is going way back to my freshman year, was a course with Dr. Molina, and I think he just retired. Carrie's talking to someone. I think he just retired, Jonathan Molina, but it was a philosophy of religion class. And that was a real struggle for me to understand how these philosophers made their arguments, how they talked about different things. And it was very difficult for me to understand all that. And I struggled with that class, and I got a solid C. You would think I'm not a very good student. I did get a lot of C's when I was here my freshman year. But again, now, a lot of what I have to do is I have to write articles, and I have to sell my point. I have to make a cogent argument. Why do I believe in this particular philosophy or theory or research method? Why do I think this is important that we all understand this? And understanding that model of how you make an argument and how you support that argument with facts and information really helps me in my job today. So I feel very fortunate to have had that experience. Another course I took here in my freshman year was mathematics. I got a D in mathematics, so we won't talk about that. That wasn't very pretty. My last year here, we all had to take, I think they switched Being Human in the 20th Century to interdisciplinary studies. We all had to take a course, and I took a psychology course called The Drug Society. It's a clever name. But basically what we did was we looked at pharmaceutical companies and looked at prescription and non-prescription drugs and how they were created and how the pharmaceutical companies talked about them and sold them and marketed these drugs. And you know, why is that important to a physical education major? It really wasn't. What was important was they asked us to be really skeptical and critical of the literature put out by these pharmaceutical companies, to think deeply, to really go and do our own research and find out about this information. And again, to me, as a professor, I'm always encouraging my students to read this article, but read it with a skeptical eye. Learn about this theory, but let's think about this. Does this really make sense for what we're trying to accomplish? And so I think learning to be skeptical and critical was an important thing that's really helped me in my life as a professor. So I think that was a really important class. Another class I remember, maybe someone here will remember the name of this professor, but I took a history course, European history. And I remember this guy who walked around playing bagpipes on the weekend. Henry Hood, that's it, yeah. You remember. So I mean, that's just quintessential Guilford. You know, a guy walking around playing bagpipes on the weekend. Yeah, he was. Do you remember him?
Yeah, just a normal setting.
Just a normal set of Guilford, yeah. So I had this course, and again, as a physical education major, I could give a hoot about history. What I remember about Professor Hood was he when he talked, you felt that he had been there with Marie Antoinette or whatever person he was talking about. He made it come to life. And he was so passionate. And it made me, who hated to read, want to read more and learn about these things. And I took that, and I still think about that today when I do my classes, particularly undergraduate classes that are elective, and students may not want to learn the information I feel strongly about. So I feel I need to be really passionate. I need to really sell this information. And my favorite thing is when I left this class with Dr. Hood, would be to chat with my peers about, wow, that was really interesting. And I love it when I hear my students at the University of Virginia leaving my class saying, wow, that was really interesting. Or in today's age, I'm going to go look that up on YouTube. I'm going to look this up and Google that. So to me, that I feel good when I hear that, and Dr. Hood made me think about those things. I also took, like a lot of you, we all had to take a non-Western course here. And I grew up in Maryland, and I didn't have any knowledge of the world around me other than my little area in Maryland and then coming down here to Guilford. And so taking a non-Western course was a challenge, and it was fun. I took non-Western religion. It was a terrific class. The professor was great. And I really learned and appreciated about different cultures and different countries and really learned about how people were different. And I've had some really fortunate things with me. I've had some really good students from all over the world. I've made some connections with people all over the world. And I love to travel and take those opportunities to travel. And again, by being in that class and learning about cultures, learning about different places around the world, it really kind of put the bug in me. Travel, learn about people, interact with people. And so it's been really, really fortunate for me. Just to give an example, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to be going to Lithuania to visit some colleagues there who do similar research as I do and have a chance to interact. And what's even more fun for me is my grandparents came from Lithuania, so I'm going to get to go see where they were raised. So that was kind of neat. And then finally, I want to share with you, and again, a lot of you who've been students here can agree with me here, is that there's this atmosphere at Guilford that is, I think, some ways unique. And the atmosphere, the two things that strike me the most is service and critical thinking and thinking to yourself. And again, I'm not the non-traditional Guilford student. I was a physical education major. I was a jock who wanted to play sports. I didn't want to do service. I didn't want to think for myself. I just wanted to do those things. And so when during, I think it was my first year here, my advisor, Joyce Clark, said, I know you're a phys ed major, but why don't you try doing something a little bit different? There's a school for the deaf, not too far from here. Why don't you see if you can volunteer as a physical education teacher there? And I thought, that's not something I would really want to do, but I'll try it. And I did, and it was a wonderful experience. And it really kind of got me interested in working with children with disabilities. And from there, she said, well, there's another school, and then there was another school. I had really lots of opportunities to volunteer with children with disabilities, which what I do now. I teach people how to work with children with disabilities. And in addition, I found out about the Special Olympics program in Greensboro and what they had to offer. So I volunteered for Special Olympics. And it was a neat experience for me that Guilford allowed me to take something I was passionate about, sports, and apply it in a service way, something Guilford was passionate about, doing service. So I put those two things together, and Special Olympics was just a perfect match for me. And I'm really proud to say that my wife and my daughter still volunteer for Special Olympics back in our hometown in Charlottesville. So that's really nice. The other thing I remember at Guilford was that they forced you to think. Again, I'm the old phys ed teacher who wants the answers. Give me the answers. What's the easy way to do things? Where was the multiple choice test? Where was the true-false test? Give me a short answer. I can do that. But no, that's not the Guilford way. Compare and contrast these two philosophers. That's the types of questions we would get. Why does this philosopher believe in this theory and support your answer? So that was the type of stuff. And I hated it. But I did it, and it made me a much better thinker, a much more critical thinker. It made me someone who could read critically other people's research, and not critical in a negative way, but really think about what they have to say and what they have to offer, and if it makes sense to me and what I'm doing. So, again, starting from being a very non-traditional student, but someone who also was very reluctant to get immersed in the liberal arts model, I've come to really appreciate that model and how it's helped me in my career. So I can't thank Guilford enough. Thank you for listening to me.